them out.
I know. Well, I don't have much for
Yeah, I took a whole slew of pictures. I was gonna share that with everybody. It's just kind of interesting to see.
That's why.
I mean, I'm sure you get.
They're that big. They're all, I mean, they'll never wear them. But they also want them.
I've noticed there's the those really big kind of like jacket sort of thing, right? It's like a jacket.
No, not at all. I got it. Let's go.
Are you making this one?
Go down. Let's roll, man. Good, how are you?
Kevin, we need to go. Sorry. No, I was told by them, we need to go. Today we have to be timely.
Let's roll.
Tomorrow we don't have.
Everybody shakes hands. Shake hands. Basketball's important.
We'll call the meeting to order. Yeah, what would you like me to do? Hi, Jerry. How are you?
I'm just fine.
All right.
Okay, good to hear.
Audible.
Right. We're going to start with just mentioning the protocol for the public comment period. At this time, the board will hear comments from the public. We ask that each speaker who has signed up to address the board come up to the microphone and state their name and address for the record. We would also ask that speakers refrain from using this forum to criticize or complain about a specific employee by name. The board is interested in your comments and will listen carefully, but is not obligated to respond to or debate issues in this forum. Should you desire a written response to a specific question, you may request it. This evening, each speaker will be allotted a maximum of 3 minutes. As a point of order, if any speaker wishes to talk later in the agenda, comments are limited only to the agenda item at hand, and speakers must first be recognized by only the Fargo Park Board President before coming to the microphone. Otherwise, the speaker may be ruled out of order. The Fargo Park Board President, however, does not have to engage in dialogue with the additional speakers. We ask that you respond to this request and act accordingly. Do we have anyone that would like to come forward? Anyone who has signed up? No? Okay. We have the consent agenda before us. We have the minutes from September 6th to approve. Would anybody like to make such a motion? Or I guess we don't need to do that. So let's look at the consent agenda, the minutes, the September bills, the order of agenda, award bid for Cornerstone Bank Arena LED light upgrades, approved purchase of 4 replacement vans for Valley Senior Services, and approve request to begin the reorganization process for the Fargo Park District as recommended in phase 1 of the strategic plan. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor? Do we need to poll the board?
Commissioner Hill,
Aye.
Commissioner Dawson,
Aye.
Commissioner Deutsch,
Aye.
Commissioner Rosted,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan.
Aye. So we have recognized the audience and come to the point where I just read the public, the agenda for, or the protocol for public comments. Let's go then to the director's report.
All right, thank you, Madam President. And for tonight's director's report, I will start to my right with our Finance Director, Brock Leeds.
Thanks, Dave. Madam President, members of the board, the bulk of the HR, finance, IT area has really been finalizing and preparing the budget, which we're going to cover later in the agenda. So at this point, I will pass and we will address that at a later point in the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Brock. And moving to my left, our Parks Director, Dave Beets.
Thank you, Dave. Commissioners, just wanted to provide you with a brief update of some of the projects that we've got going on around the district. The Brunsdale pickleball expansion is just about all complete. We have just a few punch list items there, so I know our pickleball community is excited to get back out on those courts. If you have an opportunity, stop down there. It really looks great, I think. Everybody did a nice job with this project. Our concrete improvement project that we received the grant for earlier this year is nearing a conclusion. They're right now up at Trollwood, which is one of the larger tracks of trails that we did. The goal with good weather, obviously, is always a caveat in all of these construction updates, would be to have that project wrapped up in the next 2 weeks. At that point, we're going to jump to Rose Creek, which is the last item for our contractors to complete, and that's on hole 5. We're going to continue improving the pathway at Rose Creek on hole 5. Another update is at Osgood Golf Course. We started our slope stability project there this week. The contractor's making really good strides out there. They're really doing a good job for us. We're hopeful that by the end of next week, they'll be placing topsoil on the area by hole number 8, which is where our irrigation pump house was. And then they're going to move over to hole number 6. So realistically, again, with good weather, we should easily get that completed, sometime in early to mid-November. So just wanted to provide you with those few construction updates.
Thank you, Dave. And moving to Dave's left is our Valley Senior Services Director and Foundation Director, Brian Errett.
Could I ask a question first of Dave? I just ran into Dave and Craig over at City Hall, and they had just come out of a meeting that had to do with the archery agreement with the city and with, what is the archery organization?
With Sandhills Archery.
Yes. And at the time, there had just been a woman there that came in hysterical about some things going on over at the Wildflower Park. And so Dave headed over there to see what the problem was. And after you recount what it was, I'd like to ask a question.
Sure. So Commissioner and I had the exchange at City Hall, and I did go over to Wildflower Grove. The woman had relayed information to Commissioner Morgan that there were several homeless encampments there, and the people there were roasting a deer over an open flame. So I did go over and check it out. There was an open flame. They were actually cooking catfish on the fire and not a deer, at least that I could see. The fire department had just been there because I did then call into the dispatch number. And the fire department felt that as long as they were cooking their meal there, that everything was fine. They instructed the people to put the fire out after that. Law enforcement was also contacted. They're tied up with other commitments right now, but they have it on their list to go and make contact with these people and try and get them some resources that they need so they're not camping along the river.
All right, thank you. And I was just interested to hear about the current policy about the campers in that area. And also I read a little piece about campers underneath the Main Avenue Bridge recently. Of course, that's not on park property, but I'm just wondering what the policy is on outdoor camping by the river.
Sure, and we don't allow that on any of our property. Lindenwood Campground is the only place that we allow camping, and I should caveat that there are a couple of different events that happen throughout the community that we do partner with some user groups. One of those is at Trefoil Park. There's an event there that the Model Airplane Club puts on annually, and they do request the ability to camp in that park over one specific weekend. But outside of that, we don't allow camping on any of our other properties. And so we've got a great partnership with the city and with Cass County itself, with some of their outreach workers, of when we do find these encampments that get reported to us, and even River Keepers is involved in this equation. We all work really well together to try and identify where these are. We put the right people in contact with the people that are camping, and again, like I mentioned, try and get them in touch with the resources that are available throughout the community to make sure that, we don't have them there and put them in an unsafe condition and potentially other users of that area in an unsafe condition.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Moving on to Brian.
Thanks, Dave. So I think Dave's going to talk about this when we get done with our reports, but we have selected a replacement for me at Valley Senior Services. I'm not going to announce who it is. I'm going to let Dave do that, but he is in this room. So just so you know that. Also, we received our contract. State, of course, is on a different fiscal year than we are, so the state fiscal year started on July 1st. Finally got our contract. Nutrition services includes some additional stimulus money, $700,000, which is great. I mean, it's fantastic news for us organizationally. Will help us to continue to keep up with the growth in our meals program. So that was great news. On the Park District Foundation side, just a quick update on where we are with fundraising. Right now, we've raised about $32.4 million towards the sports complex and the Island Park pool. That includes a couple of $3 million gifts from the ICE community that are going to be part of your discussion tonight. And we had talked about $1 million gift for Island Park pool. We have the signed agreement for that. All those agreements came in today.
Nice.
So today's a $7 million day, which is incredible. I mean, it's an exciting thing to be a part of and incredible for the Park District and the foundation to have the success we've had. On top of that $32.4 million, we've raised a shade over $10 million in-kind types of commitments. A chunk of that is an interest reduction that we negotiated with Bell Bank. In addition, there is funding that Sanford's providing operationally for the complex, services that Midco is providing in kind. So grand total is over $42 million that has been raised to assist with the sports complex and to a smaller extent with the Island Park pool. There was a question at the facilities committee meeting last week about what naming opportunities there still are available with the sports complex, phase 1, phase 2, and Island Park pool. We have about $35 million in naming opportunities, which is kind of what our goal is, to help the Park District, to be in a comfortable spot when you get done with all of these new facilities. And that $35 million includes probably somewhere close to, it's $27 million for the existing sports complex, so phase 1, then another $15 million roughly. Is my math right? $10 million for the phase 2 part of the complex. And then some dollars as well for the Island Park pool. So the amenities are available, for us to do a great job in making this complex a first-class facility and to do it in such a way that it doesn't harm the Park District fiscally. And I think that's the goal of the foundation. So that's my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Brian, how's Meals on Wheels?
Great. And Meals on Wheels is doing well. If you want to deliver, of course, the phone number is 293-1440. Always looking for volunteers for the program. You know, our numbers in that program escalated during the pandemic and they haven't gone down, and I don't look for them to. You know, so that's going to be an ongoing need. And one day somebody else will tell you our phone number for getting volunteers in here, and that person's in the room, but we're not going to say who it is.
Can you give us that number one more time, Brian?
293-1440.
So, by the way, when do we get to find out who the person in the room is?
Well, Dave is going to make that announcement under his report.
I see.
That's
They have to give me something to say tonight.
Yes.
So thank you. Any other questions,
you.
Commissioners? All right, thank you, Brian. Our
Great
next,
report, by the way. Thank you.
our Enterprise Director, Carolyn Botain.
Commissioners, with the change of seasons, we have some change in schedules. At Lindenwood, we have closed the bikes and kayaks for the season. Campground B also closed this past Sunday. Campground A will be open till October 15th, weather permitting. We also have golf courses changing their schedule. The 9-hole courses will be closing October 16th. That's the last day for Prairiewood, Osgood, and Elzagle. And then weather permitting, we will be open through the end of the month with our 18-hole courses at Rose Creek and Edgewood. Course Plus is busy hosting many tennis tournaments this weekend. So if you're excited about Minnesota AA, they are playing this weekend, the 4th through the 6th at Course Plus. Minnesota 8A is the 13th through the 15th. And there's also a USTA tennis tournament the 21st through the 23rd.
It must be girls.
You know, I'm not sure.
It is, yep.
Because the North Dakota boys are in Mina.
So there you go. That's all we have. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Carolyn. And moving on to our last director, Kevin Bowe, our Recreation Director.
Good evening, Commissioners from the Recreation Department. Last couple weekends, fall in Fargo, we had just shy of 9,500 visitors for that Fall in Fargo event, which is a great event. A little rainy over the second weekend, but not too bad. Island Park Pool Project update, staff and previous commissioner who was in the room, Stacy Griggs. Thank you for serving on that to follow that through with the pool. Meeting with Zerberg and WTI and some design works. So kind of some milestones that are coming up. The design development documents should see those in end of October. Construction documents mid-December, and then with bid opening that will come in mid-January. So coming right around the corner. As Carolyn stated, the seasons have changed. So ice arenas, Cornerstone Bank Arena is fully operational at this point. We've got a tournament coming up this weekend. The Coliseum will start October 10th, followed by the sports arena on the 17th of October. We need to get through the volleyball season at that sports arena. And then finally, the Broadway Square rink will be starting to install November 7th, believe it or not. We are here.
Weather pending.
Weather pending.
And we didn't have ice when we lit the tree last year, so let's hope.
Let's hope. That's all I got. Questions?
All right, thank you,
Thank you.
Kevin. Thank you, directors. And for the final presentation, and before I get to our new Valley Senior Services Director, who is currently in the room, I'll give you an update on, I'll give you just a little teaser there. I'll give you an update on where we are with our other search committees. We did finish up our foundation interviews last Friday, and we are currently in discussions on those. We have scored our 2 deputy director positions, deputy director of administration, deputy director of operations, and our first round of interviews, I believe we have 4 set up for Thursday, 1 on Friday and 1 on Monday next week. And I believe those were the deputy director of operation interviews. So just a little update on that. And now for the big announcement, we did finish interviewing for Valley Senior Services Director on Friday last week and wrapped up our discussions at that time. And Stacy and I did meet again on Monday. And this person does have some very big shoes to fill, as Brian Ayers has done a great job over his decades of service. So at this time, I'd like to announce our new Valley Senior Services Director, which I'm sure everybody knows, is Paul Grinland. So if we could give him a round of applause.
Hey, Paul, what's that number for Meals on Wheels?
Can you give that to me one more time, Paul?
He's got it written on his hand for some reason.
So with that, Paul will be starting his new transition into the new position on Monday. So, we were looking for a 2-month overlap with Brian before he rides off into the sunset, but we're actually going to have 2 months and a couple weeks to get that overlap. So I think Paul will be able to hit the ground running and do an excellent job for the Park District. So I appreciate all the applicants that applied and interviewed, and I appreciate our search committee. And Stacy Kruger that headed that up. So everybody did a nice job, and we got 1 down, 3 to go. With that, I'll wrap up my director's update. So, Madam President, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Paul.
wondering
This is Jerry.
Yeah, congratulations. And I was just wondering if you would say a word or two.
Or 11 minutes worth. Either that or Rob's got to be real quick.
2 words, thank you. I think I should thank the commissioners and the directors for hiring me for only 1 directorship and not 2 jobs, because I don't know how Brian did it. Been amazed at him doing both directorships all this way through. So I think we should really thank Brian for all that work, for sure. And I look forward to transitioning. We've already started talking this morning, so I can't wait, actually. It'll be fun.
Thank you
Congratulations.
for joining the team.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay, let's move on to number 3, presentation of part 2 of the pre-design study for phase 2 of Fargo Park Sports Complex.
All right, Paul, or Rob, and just to let you know, we do have our budget hearing at 6 o'clock, so I will try to flag you down as we get close to that time, and we can take a slight break in there unless you can be done in 11 minutes. So I'll turn it over to Rob.
All right. Challenge.
All right, thank you, commissioners and staff. Rob Remark, JLG Architects, presenting on the kind of conclusion of the pre-design study that was done for the sports complex edition. So for the sake of time, I'm going to give kind of a high level of the documents that are going to be included in the final report, and happy to answer any questions if there's anything that anyone would like to interject or questions that need to be responded. So if we want to switch to that presentation just note that this was a pre-design study, and so what that was doing was looking at the potential additions to the existing complex, studying the programming, the size, the scope, and starting to align the budget in alignment with the master plan and the institutional master plan that was in place for the project. So we've been working with the engineering team that worked on phase 1 and collecting more information and putting more refinement to the concept. So I'll quickly give a high level of what that looks like. If we go to the next page, you'll see an image of the institutional master plan, which summarizes sort of the impact of the addition to the existing building. So the existing building are the areas that are in gray. The proposed future additions tied to suggested parking are the items with color. And the kind of half-toned images that don't have any detail to them are really the areas of the future institutional master plan for future expansion consideration. So as we plan the site out in full capacity for the property at large. You're seeing a summary of this to the right. And so I think if we move down to the next page, what's going to happen is we'll zoom in a little bit to be able to see it. So right now you're looking at the entire site, and then we'll look at the building additions a little bit more specifically right now. So what you're seeing are 2 hockey sheets on this north side in this darker blue color. That's approximately 73,000 square feet with a proposed 10,000 square feet of spectator mezzanine that'll be looked at and studied more in the next phases. You're looking at 4 additional basketball courts with very similar sizing to the phase 1 courts. So providing a total of 8 courts to the facility. You're seeing some additional basketball storage as well as necessary space connected to the kind of the mechanical suite of the existing building for critical mechanical, electrical, and other service connections. You're seeing expansion of multi-purpose rooms So this is actually something that was bid as an alternate in the base bid project for the existing project that's under construction. So you're seeing the continued expansion of that space. What you're seeing here now is something that was always talked about as part of the original vision and coming to life as indoor play space. So in the purple, you're looking at around 6,000 square feet of indoor play space with multi-purpose rooms for parties and events to support that kind of growing need in the community. And then to the east of that, you're looking at an addition for 6 pickleball courts. And like I mentioned, for most of these program items, you can see future expansion of how these all kind of tie across, and the full master plan could be seen with a 3rd sheet of ice, additional courts, additional pickleball or courts, multi-purpose type space there. And you can see kind of the existing, how that sort of all starts to fill out the existing site quite a bit. So if we scroll down here, what you're going to see, and I won't get into more detail, but what you will see is sort of the development. This is really actually just looking at the mezzanine level, about 10,000 square feet of ice mezzanine, a strategy that could connect it to the existing mezzanine, but then also act sort of independently for viewing into both sheets of ice. So I think we can scroll down quick. Now what you're seeing as part of the pre-design document at this time is a little bit of a zoom in, and this is the work that's really been happening in part 2 of the pre-design, is a little bit more detail on how do the spaces actually start to lay out within the larger box spaces. So it's a process of developing and building up information. We're still at a pre-development, pre-design level, but you're starting to understand how the spaces actually connect to the existing space. And this is really teeing up well for future user group meetings. So there was mention of the hockey programs, some of the different programs that have become partners. And one of the first things that's going to happen moving forward will be to meet with those entities and meet with the park district and really get into the specific scopes and needs within those spaces. So at a large level, we're identifying what the space can contain, the square footage, aligning that to the budget. And there's a certain level of detail that will continue to happen and grow from meeting with different user groups and talking about the specific operations and utilization of the space. So you're seeing 8 locker rooms to serve the 2 sheets of ice, and then you're seeing identified some space that was part of the existing program that also will serve and support the ice. So you're seeing a pretty nice 2-sheet ice complex that is similar to some of the other facilities that the park district is already running, and actually becoming more right-sized for community ice. And will continue to be honed in as we continue with user group meetings. If we scroll down, we'll look at a little zoom in, and this is pretty straightforward. You're seeing courts. This is just representing, basketball courts for scale, but this is mixed use space for basketball, volleyball, all kinds of different cross training and activities that can happen on the court space. And the idea here is just large span open court space to continue to advance the ability to host great tournaments and continue to bring those sort of indoor amenities to the community. If we continue on, we'll see now as the diagram expands, kind of the expansion to the multi-purpose room, and you can really see the type of larger space that's created with this addition. Now you're starting to take advantage to the main circulation areas that were located in the building. This design originally was structured around a very strong north-south corridor connecting spine. The idea behind the building is about transparency from within to the activities that are happening. So as this continues to be built and you start to see images of the interior spaces come to life, something that's going to be really special about the design of this building is there's going to be a whole lot of community circulation that's going to happen north and south. And there's great visibility into the public spaces to be able to see the activities. So the goal is that the life of the park district and the activities and the activity of the community is being seen and felt throughout the building, so that when you go in, you're actually being exposed to all of those activities with the goal of, maybe being exposed to something that you haven't seen before and then piquing some interest in checking that out. I did note here the other connecting element on the for the design is the east-west connection, knowing that there was this concept for future additions and needing to also be able to support that. So there's an east-west spine. So you can imagine the large parking that's down in the area to the south, access through the main entry, being able to utilize connection between some of the different office and sports medicine needs, but then actually being able to connect for more recreation and community activities on the east side of the building on the main level.
Rob, regarding the community rooms you are showing there, that could be one large community room or 3 smaller ones, correct?
Correct. And there will be some work that will need to be done to talk about that and program that out, because as of right now, there is a wall, designed in a foundation here. So we'll be looking at what those strategies will want to look like, and again, talking about users and talking about the type of events that you want to host, and making some of those strategic changes in the near future. If we scroll down.
I just like to ask one question. It's really a wide ranging question, but when we were out at Sweet Shots, the fellow said, why is it that people put the entrances on the north-south axis? Especially in this country, it's so cold and windy, and that's where we get the winds. I was just wondering what the answer to that would be.
Yeah, I mean, if you can avoid if the site allows you to avoid the northwest, you try to avoid it for sure. And if you can't avoid it, you try to be really considerate about door hardware and operational and vestibules to be able to maintain it and manage it. So if you can avoid it, you try to avoid it for sure. Sometimes the site parameters, like on a building of this size, you're just getting to some pretty strong parameters that are just dictating and really the way that this facility is starting to operate, largely with the way that the site's structured with the north-south and maximizing the size and be able to get the parking. That's kind of how it's structured itself. But yeah, whenever you can use a southern exposure for snow melt and some of the natural elements to keep that warm and welcoming, you go for it.
Yeah.
This image here, and I know that we're going to be pushing time, but this image here is a massing image. And one of the things that we wanted to make sure happened as part of the pre-design was that we were able to communicate that this is one building. Additions to this are not standalone, but it's really one building, and it's strategically designed to be able to include the future additions, including the one we're looking at today. So you're seeing ICE here, where future ICE would sit in this general area. You're seeing the courts addition here, and then you're seeing that kind of addition to the courts and multipurpose there. So if we scroll down to the next image, you can see from the main entry facade how that also starts to fit. So what is white?
If you want to take a quick break here, I don't
That's
know
fine.
if anybody is here for the hearing, but we'll take a break at this time and begin there. So I'll turn that back. I'll turn that back to Madam President for the hearing.
All right, so I guess that I'm a little bit unfamiliar with this step. So a public hearing, does that just mean that we're asking anybody from the public who would like to speak?
We actually have to open the hearing.
Yeah, I believe we have to open the public hearing at 6 o'clock and then ask if there's anybody.
Okay, so let's open the meeting and then we'll ask if anybody would like to speak. If not, then we'll move ahead.
Then we can close the hearing, I believe.
Okay, and then we'll close the hearing.
Yep.
All right, thanks for everybody for being so quiet.
All right. I believe that
Do you want to?
meets our requirements.
Budget now, or do you want to go back to
No, I
Rob?
think,
Did you
Go back
still?
to Rob?
yeah, I think we'll go back to
Let
Rob.
finish
So
the-
thank you, Rob.
All right, Rob Remark, JLG Architects. Thank you, guys.
Please don't start over.
That. So now, Rob, this doesn't mean you get to talk forever.
I won't. I'm gonna be so quick. So if we scroll down to the next image, we'll just look at, I was noting that, one of the big goals of the pre-design study too was to be able to communicate to this audience and to the community that as we think about the design of this building, the goal of the park district and all of the previous user groups and work that's been done has been really thinking about one big building. And it's been thinking about 365 days a year. And it's been thinking about supporting activity, both for recreation and wellness, but all sorts of community wellness. And part of that was we wanted to make sure that the building had the ability to expand. And so we want to, kind of communicate where those additions are. So again, what is white and dashed in is the existing building that's under construction. You can drive by and see this happening now. You can see these foundations and get a good understanding for the size of the building. And then what is in the darker colors are those strategic additions to the east of the site. And if we scroll down to the next image, we'll see kind of a shot of that front main door. So before you might have seen, the primary images would have been shifted a little bit to view more of the west, but to get this all to fit on the screen, we nudged. So you've got the front door. You've got some of the main level park district offices. you have the existing meeting room and it ends right here, actually. So now what you're doing is you're adding more meeting room space. And then this piece that comes out and kind of comes to the sidewalk is the indoor playground space. And so we'll be working on advancing this design. But the idea here is that there's just going to be great visibility, great activity, great energy, and that you'll continue to see that activity when you're approaching the building, when you're parking, families when they're coming for their siblings game or tournament or day of jail volleyball or whatever it is, they'll see that activity and feel that activity. And then just to the east of that over there is where we're starting to see that pickleball edition or that mixed kind of multi-court sport edition. So again, I think that that there was a lot of time and energy spent in thinking about the scalability of the building being so large, and the massing of it is really starting to play out nice, and will be a beautiful amenity for the community. And if we scroll down one more, what you're seeing here are, you're seeing a little glimpse of kind of process. So right now, as of our most recent estimates, this is sort of a buildup of the numbers broken out per space. And these are challenging numbers to do. They include about 15% in soft costs, but we're taking the larger square footage. We're taking a lot of information from the previous bid. We're extrapolating that information for escalation based off of kind of the craziness that has been the construction industry, even since the bidding of phase one. And sculpting the budget to align with the program that's been identified and that I've gone through today. Of course, we'll continue to be strategic if the project continues to progress the way that it's progressing, to bring as much value and as much square footage transparency to this group as possible, and to continue to achieve the same level of finish and execution that is phase one into the future phases. So that's kind of the goal and the numbers that you're seeing, as well as the site costs. Just a kind of a quick note on that is, with the institutional master plan, there are the goals and objectives and the requirement to continue to improve the site amenities related to the building construction. So some of those are actually tied. The plant unit counts, as well as the parking requirements are tied together. And there's some really unique opportunities to, I think, continue to improve even on the bottom line number here by working with the consultant team and the design team to really look for the opportunities in phase one that can be expanded and advanced strategically into phase two. So, questions? I know some of you have heard this one a few times. Most of you in here have, maybe.
Has the price of the scope for the build out gone up since it was approved by the commission?
Dave, I might have to lean on you a little bit on what was actually approved. I would say the numbers that were proposed previously have gone up some as the scope has been refined and developed. You'll see some of the square footages have increased a little bit. Of course, there's more programming and confirmation from user groups to continue to hone that. So that would be one thing moving forward that we really want to focus on, is what is, clarity on that budget number, and then working with that scope to make sure that we have the right levers to make sure that it comes in on budget. And that's something that I look at a lot of the people in this room worked really hard in phase one to make sure that could be achieved, and would be the same exercise that would happen here in phase two.
And Commissioner Morgan, what we talked about in phase two was a pre-designed study, and that was broken into two parts. Part one was that very, very, very high level estimate of what the scope we were kind of entailing, what it would be, and it's kind of listed out there with, the 2 sheets of ice, the 4 hard surface courts, pickleball playground, and the 2 community rooms, and that was their high level estimate, part one of phase two. And then as we got approval for them to move on to part 2 of phase two, they did a little deeper dive and they got involved in the engineering, the HVAC, the electrical, and just accumulated some better numbers. So I think that's where you see that additional cost in there, is just that they've been able to do a deeper dive into what the projected estimate for this complex is. And as Rob mentioned earlier, the state of the construction industry right now, we've talked to them and said, we need the best possible numbers for a spring 2023 start. And I think they've worked that in there, and they want to be more than conservative on their estimates. So.
Yeah, there's some things like, for instance, 320 parking stalls started to get laid out more specifically. These are including the cost for a fairly significant size generator. So there's things that need to continue to refine. And as you continue on in the design phases, the goal is more information, tighter number, continuing to work that way together. So we are working at a fairly high level still, but feeling, like these are good paths to move forward on.
I did notice that you were referring to further phases.
Yeah, design phases.
Yes.
That's not up to me.
Okay. Well, one of the things I've, thought from the beginning of coming to serve on the board was that we needed to spend some of this money in other places other than just one facility. So not being in opposition to this, as I've said previously, I would like to see that we kind of wrap this up and start to look at the rest of the park district to see how we can serve the needs of more residents. So, that's been kind of my point from all along, is that I would just like to see, recreation, looking at recreation in a much wider view. So we've got a kind of recreation here, but it certainly isn't the full spectrum. So I'd like to just impress that before we make the vote.
Are there any other questions for Rob as he winds down his presentation?
Well, as you're winding down, then what are you going to do about that wall you mentioned last time? You said you were going to have to do something about it. You were going to change it, the one that will be adjoining to the previous plan.
Oh, yeah, I might have just advanced something. Yeah, there's going to be a number of opportunities. So, with whatever the direction is moving forward, there's a number of opportunities that are scoped right now for phase one that will want to be critically considered as strategic moves in the investment of the future project that can be leveraged for the next opportunity. So a couple of those are, there's a wall that divides. If we go maybe just to a plan, I can share a couple of them at a really high level. There's a wall right here that's an exterior wall between the courts. There could be a strategy where that wall is actually, it's actually made, like the concrete is made and it is sitting, it's a precast wall and it's sitting on a site. But it could be leveraged for this exterior wall, and then a less expensive wall could be shared in the middle. Dave mentioned this wall here, the foundations and things are well upon, their way, but there's other things that we can strategically do. There's different glass and different things at the end of these corridors that strategically could shift. So there's a handful of items that are on a list that are ready to be acted on with the right direction, if that's the direction to move forward with.
Sure. Well, as you had said, they were previously planned to be exterior walls. And so you have some work to do there.
Yes, if we can use them for exterior walls still, that would be the goal.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Rob. And Madam President, that'll wrap up item number 3.
Right. So let's move forward to the approval of the 2023 budget. Dave and Brock, presenters.
All right, before we get going on the 2023 budget, and I will turn that over to Brock, I'd just like to thank Brock and his financial team, along with all the directors and their staff that help compile this budget. And I'm sure Brock will agree with this, that it doesn't just take the finance department, it takes everybody working together and for the good of the park district. So they've all got to have to be able to see that big picture and what's, the priorities and the needs are at the time. So with that being said, I'd just like to thank all the park district staff that were involved in the budget, and I will turn item number 4 over to Brock Leitz, our finance director.
Thanks, Dave. Madam President, members of the board, we'll just walk through the highlights of the 2023 budget. As you recall, on August 2nd, you gave preliminary approval to the budget as we're required to do statutorily through the county. We then went to work on fine tuning that budget and presented it to you at the facilities committee meeting on September 28th, and we bring it to you tonight for your consideration and potential approval so that we can then submit to the county by October 10th for final certification. I'll walk through those highlights. highlights. I'll give you some additional information of feedback that we received and then open it up for any questions that you might have. If we go to what is page 1, it's not numbered, but it says Park District, City of Fargo. It's really our mill levy page in the budget. You will note that as we just had a presentation for the potential for phase 2 of the Fargo Park Sports Complex, we have built into this budget 2 pieces of taxation that will allow for, thank you, 2 pieces of taxation that will allow for our ability to bond for this project and finance for it appropriately. Those are found partially in the general fund for parks. The mill levy in the current year is 14.98. We are increasing that levy by 1 mil to 15.98, and that will be used to be part of the funding formula that we will need for phase 2. If you look at the valuation, I noted this at the facilities committee meeting, you really have 2 pieces to increase revenue in a city entity or in an entity like ours that has taxation authority. You get the increased value on the existing mills. And so in the current year, an existing mill is worth $660,782. It's estimated next year for 2023 to be $714,900. And so the 14.98 mills grows by that valuation increase. So you realize new revenues from that. Secondly, then you have the new revenues from the single mill. So it's a combination of the growth as well as the mill increase. The other piece of our budget that increased as a part of this is under the special assessment section. You see that in the current year, we're levying 9.08 mills. We have a proposal here to increase that levy 3.55 mills up to 12.63. As you know, you approved a bond resolution which started a 60-day protest period. That 60-day protest period expired on the 2nd of October. And that now allows you as a district or as an entity to issue the debt that is associated with that project. That 60-day protest period and the general obligation bond is specific to phase 2 of this project. It's a sinking and interest levy, and it will go down as valuation prices go up. So you'll see that change. So that summary really has our budget for 2023 seeing a 4.55 increase in the mill levy on the taxable value to our taxpayers for the purpose of operating the day-to-day operations of the Fargo Park District and proceeding potentially with phase 2, if you approve this budget, of the Fargo Parks Sports Complex.
Oh, Brock, I just wanted to ask, during that protest period, what did you hear? I mean, what was the consensus of that?
Yeah, so great question, Madam President. I had 3 specific phone calls to me, and then, as you know, our President Morgan had an email request to herself about what is happening with the complex. The 3 phone calls that I had were really information gathering. 2 of them were members that did not give me their name, but identified themselves as senior citizens on a fixed income in the community and really appreciative of everything we do for the parks. They utilize the parks, they enjoy it, but are realizing that as taxation continues to increase, a big portion of that is from the park district. One of the gentlemen had said that in the last year, their property tax portion from the park district increased 20%. And that is very possible given the increase we had a year ago because of their valuation went up plus the taxation increase. But again, really was just saying at this point and in my stage in my life, I would encourage the park district to pump the brakes on what they're doing and understand that all of us are dealing with different things from our taxation portion. One of the gentlemen said, you know, I just want to understand the legal authority by which you approve debt without a vote of the public. And as I explained, the law changed in 2019 with the legislature. He thanked me and said, okay, if you guys have the authority to do it, I understand that you can do that. This may have been something the public should have had an opportunity to vote on, but it's not required. And that's great. And one of the things I think is important, and this is really a credit, I think, to the Park District as a whole. Every one of these calls that I got finished with a real appreciation for the fact that we get back to them and we have a conversation and we just talk through it. Many times the public just wants to be heard, I believe. And yes, they'd love to have their taxes not go up, but they're so appreciative they get a chance to talk through it and understand the logistics. And so generally speaking, I would tell you that those were good calls. None of them were angry calls. They were just information gathering. I'd prefer it a different way, but I understand it. And thank you for getting back to us. And so generally speaking, I thought they were pretty good. Then the one that you had, Commissioner Morgan, we did provide you some logistical information just on the structure of the payments and how that all worked. And I did not receive any follow-ups. I don't know if you did, but we tried to really provide all of the data about the funding sources and the breakdown.
Yeah, I think that, that public protest period went really well. It sounds as if people were positive. I do know that the people of Fargo really appreciate Fargo Park District and everything that it has to offer. Just as referencing my previous comment, they have different needs. So an older person may enjoy Lindenwood Park or Island Park more than they would, for instance, a sporting complex. But that's, one of the things that we need to listen to. So I really think it's great to hear from the public and just the perspectives that they have.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
This
Any
is
further
Jerry. I
questions?
just want to, if I can jump in quick. Most every comment that I received back on it was positive, that people are looking forward. They see what this facility can do for the city of Fargo. And at the same time too, and I understand where Commissioner Morgan is coming from, but I don't think it's an either or, that we're going to either do this or we're going to do other stuff. I think we can do a lot of different things, and we are. So I just don't want the message to seem like, we're sacrificing everything to get the sports complex built when we're actually doing a lot of other good things in this park district as well.
Yeah, I agree with that, Jerry, but we did talk too at the last board meeting is that the mill levies continue to expand as long as the city expands. And there is a certain parameter that's being created just by the physical aspects of the definitions of what Fargo will be. So I think it's, once we finish with this project, I think it's time to start looking at what our containment is going to be in the future and our extension, potential extension of mill levies. So we've got lots of things to think about, and we're at a really important point right now and we need to move ahead, but I think we should consider this really wider scope of where we're going to be when the city of Fargo hits the diversion.
I want to add on to what Jerry said, because I think that it's not a one or the other. I think that the sports complex or the complex, call it whichever you want, I think this additional phase provides many more opportunities than just sports, if you want to call it that. I think you don't have to play a sport to appreciate a lot of the resources we have in this community. Carolyn mentioned the tennis. She's like, what? Carolyn mentioned the tennis tournaments that are taking place at Courts Plus. And I know that there are Courts Plus people and even the public that say, oh my gosh, I could go watch high schoolers and college kids or whoever go play tennis. They just enjoy that part of it. With the complex and the fact that so many of those spaces can be used for so many different things, I think Kevin's already off to the races on, they all get like, what, me? When I mention their names, but he's already said they've talked about art classes and opportunities that they're pretty limited with RDJ and where we are now. And that I think we're going to have a lot of opportunities that aren't going to be limited. It's really easy right now to see ice and courts and turf and pickleball and just think it's meant for the sports people. But I think there is a lot of opportunity and we aren't just doing that. We've been fast and furious with Island Park and the pool and Yonker Farm. And I mean, you guys know you're doing all the heavy lifting. So I don't think we're leaving people behind necessarily. And I do think that we have a lot of opportunity, obviously. And I think it's important that we are listening to those people for what they want. But I do think we are doing a lot of different things for a lot of different people.
kind of go off of that as well. I think what I'm excited about is for the foundation to be able to have more opportunity to kind of develop relationships with businesses in the community. And I think, you know, if this goes well and we develop those relationships and the foundation continues to build as we have arts projects, now we have these relationships built that we can go to some of these partners and say, hey, we've got other projects, other opportunities, different things in different parts of town that we would like help with. And I think this is a good springboard for us to be able to just bring those in.
That's an
Yeah,
an excellent point, and I'm just really happy to see that the foundation is growing
Yes.
and that it's strengthening and that its outreach will really captivate the attention of more and more people as we go along.
yeah, just on a smaller scale, to put into context, the opportunities that are in this building that, as Vicky just said, aren't as simple as basketball, volleyball, hockey. Craig and I and Brian and Lexi worked on a grant through a local foundation to get several $100,000 for a multimedia room that we're going to use as our boardroom, but also, I mean, in the process of attaining the funds for such a room, we had to brainstorm ideas for several different things that we could do in there. I.e. is, I think you might have alluded to, Kevin, like cooking classes that could be broadcast live out of this multimedia room like there, and we received the grant. So once we get to the point where this, and that was in the phase one portion of it. So the more opportunity we lay out there, the more opportunity there is for ideas, creativity, and as Aaron mentions, and, you know, more opportunities to work with other businesses. And I just, yeah, 100% agree with everybody on what they've all said, that yes, this is an amazing complex, but we also have an amazing imagination of ability in front of us that we can continue to not only do out there, but then bring back into other portions of the community too.
And you look at the art classes that Vicky had mentioned, but the adaptive programs that we could offer, this facility will be the location for a lot of those programs that we can't offer because we don't have this type of facility right now. We go into schools when it's available for us. The RDJ has been a great asset for us for the short term, but very limited. But the future for like adaptive programs, adaptive the ice, you know, the Hope Inc. groups, it could be a great location for a lot of these programs.
Yeah, it's a fair point. We really don't, outside of at Courts Plus, have, you know, courts in our facility for our recreation groups to utilize to run. So the sky's the limit on recreational opportunities for outside of, you know, travel sports type stuff. So.
The sky's the limit. We could do community sales, like rummage sales in January when everybody is hunkered down for the winter. I mean, there are so many things that we can do. I think we should adjourn the meeting, get out there and help build this thing.
So, Madam President, members of the board, if we take a look at some additional highlights of the budget, you'll see some emphasis on a lot of what you guys are talking about right now, which doesn't leave the Park District with the haves and have-nots. So, for example, if you look at our revenue side, this page 4 now in your budget is really the totality by department of revenue versus expenditures. And if you look at our preliminary budget for 2023, which is in front of you to approve today, you see that our total revenues are 30 million, projected to be 30,578,869. That's an estimate of about 3.3 million over last year's budget. How that comes in compared to last year's actual, we'll know when we close the budget. But again, it's new dollars that are coming in. And I think to reiterate some of what you're saying, if you look at the expense side, two things that I would bring to your attention. We have expenditures in this budget of $28,752,965. That's $3.6 million in expenditures over budget for last year. As you think about that, I would draw out the maintenance and operations line in the expenditures, and that's $5.6 million. And really that is our budget team, and it really is a team working with Dave Beats and his team to say, we need a facilities plan, an operational maintenance and facilities plan to really enhance everything we're currently doing and make sure that we're staying on top of maintenance and repairs and things of that nature. So to your point, Madam President, we're really trying to make sure we're putting dollars annually into maintaining the things we have and enhancing them and making them better. We don't want to leave those facilities behind because we're covering the entirety of the city of Fargo. And I think that's one place where there's evidence. You see that that's growing. Last year, we budgeted 4.7 million. This year, we're budgeting 5.6. And that's because we really have an obligation and a commitment to all of our facilities. And that's an example in working with Dave's team and everybody that's involved in that of doing that. The other piece in how the budget gets balanced is if you look at transfers to the capital fund, we are putting $1.8 million of transfers to the capital fund. And that's really what I call, that's really the mechanism we're using to fund our long-range capital plan. We bring that to you annually. We talk about it at facilities meetings. We talk about it at budget meetings. We have things that we know we're not going to do next year, but we have to continue to save to do them in the future. And Dave and his team have done a wonderful job of helping to put that together and saying, you know what, in 3 years, we need to do X. And so we have to be planning for that. So that, what last year was just over $2 million, this year or next year is going to be $1.8 million. And that's really helping us grow toward what are the projects that are coming up that are not the sports complex that we know we have to do in the future. And that really is, I think, a proactive step on our part as a district to really take care of the things in the operational maintenance line, but also save for the future. So I think we're trying to do a combination of exactly what you guys have talked about, is that we've got an entire city of parks and facilities, et cetera, to make sure we're maintaining. So that's a portion of doing that.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to just ask is that I remember we were having a conversation about how that was going to work in terms of whether there would be budget cuts in for some of the departments, for instance, the facilities and projects that have been planned going forward. And I remember that there was some concern about that, whether as you were speaking about the amounts of funds that are going into existing projects, have those been decreased or increased?
Yeah, so both is the answer. So when you look at the maintenance and operation, that's really the annual maintenance and operation side that we have to deal with at 5.6 million. You see that that's a budgetary increase of about $900,000 from last year to this year. So that's an increase, and it's based on our ability to fund those things. Now, that being said, I believe, and Dave, I'll have this number wrong, but I think initial submission from Dave Beats and his team was roughly $10 million, maybe a little more. But we also prioritized those into priorities 1, 2s, and 3s and determined which things are imperative for next year. And so I don't know that there were budget cuts necessarily in eliminating the 2s and the 3s. I think there's a realization that we need a long-range facilities plan, and not everything can happen in 1 year. And quite frankly, one of the conversations Dave and I have had is, if we gave him $12 million, could he get $12 million worth of work done? Not sure, right? There's a lot of work that has to happen. And so at some point, you're funding what you believe you can accomplish in that given year, and you're planning for the 2s and the 3s. So that's where it's not cut. Now, if you look at the budget transfers, that is reduced from just over 2 million in 2022 to 1.8 million in 2023. Part of the reason for that is, you recall, we set aside one general fund mill in order to help the bridge loan for the current projects we're doing this year. And we've discussed that as we do that, that cuts into our operations. It didn't take it to zero. It didn't halt what we're doing. It slowed it down. And so if we weren't doing that, we could infuse an additional $714 million into that transfer. But that's a decision we collectively made to save $7 million worth of projected increased costs to these projects. And so it really is a balancing act and a give and take, where we don't completely stop everything, but we make very strategic decisions about how we move forward to get all of the things done.
So what is the length of time for that bridge loan?
I'm not an attorney, but I think the answer is always, it depends. So it depends means it depends how much we need to borrow. And part of that is, we've reiterated, and you guys have talked about it tonight, the foundation continues to work very hard to try to offset the public public-private portion of these projects. And so if additional private dollars come in, that means we need less of a bridge loan. If that bridge loan is projected to be at $10.2 million, that's what 1 mil would service at that time. We may not need all of that. As we continue to see good efforts, $7 million days, then we know that we probably need less of that bridge loan. But that has to continue to happen. And so we all know that. So it really depends on how much we need to take and how quickly we can pay that off.
Sure. Well, the reason I'm asking all these questions is that they're the questions that come up to me.
Yep.
And since we're elected, we represent the public.
Correct.
And it would be wonderful if the public really knew more about what it is behind the scenes a little bit, because the kinds of complaints are usually ill-informed, but that is usually the case with complaints anyway. So I'm just wondering if there's, any way we can get the message out more clearly to the public about what our objectives and that we're not forgetting about others and that we're moving ahead on various projects.
Yeah.
It would be, I don't know, how do we do that with our communications department?
Well, and actually Carolyn and her team has just reached out to me with a survey they're putting together for exactly what you're talking about, kind of public input, and maybe I'll let Carolyn explain that one. She's probably got a good handle on it.
As the commissioners have requested, we are making plans for some more public input and just opportunities to communicate out with the public what is going on. And we are bringing our marketing staff up to speed, obviously, because we have some new folks that are learning what we are about. But I did just send that off to Dave, and we will have a discussion next week in order to get that then sent out so the public can give us an idea of how they want to hear this information and what information they're most interested in. And then we will abide by their request and figure out the multitude of ways that we can give them that information.
That's wonderful. And it's just like with that period of time where it's kind of called a look back period or a protest period. Most of the time, people just want information and they're not ill-willed. They're not really angry. They just want to know and they want to feel like they're part of it. So this is going to help a lot. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Madam President, members of the board, the final piece I would point out to you then in our budget would be, as you're aware, we talked at a facilities meeting, a significant portion of any organization's overhead is their personnel. And we have within this budget embedded a 5% pool for salary increases for regular full-time employees. That pool we recommended to you in September would be split between a 4% COLA, cost of living adjustment, and a 1% merit to be distributed based on performance and performance measures through the managers. The other piece is we've embedded an 18% increase in our seasonal wages because we understand that in the current market, we need to be more competitive. And as we are all competing for seasonal employees, that we need to do a better job of really elevating our hourly seasonal wages. And so that is embedded in here as well. The good news about both of those is in doing all of that, we balanced our budget without general obligation or without general mill levy increases for daily operations. All of these increases in really the spirit of what Commissioner Rosted talks to us about, really looking for efficiencies and addition by subtraction. We've done those additions with the current valuation increases and not asking for more mills to make that happen. And so also in there is $731,000 for new positions. And so we found ways to be creative in other places in our budget to allow for that growth without additional taxation. So that is really the highlights of the budget as we presented it for 2023. I believe that we've got a budget that allows us to continue to do all the operations of the Park District, allows us to do the growth and the implementation of the strategic plan phase 1 as it's been laid out for us, continues to maintain our current facilities and operations, and also moves forward one of the most exciting public-private partnership projects that we've seen in this community in recent memory. So with that, I certainly will stand for any questions that you might have in addition of what I've presented.
Does anybody have a question they'd like to ask Brock?
And if not, I just want to make sure also to publicly reiterate what Dave Leaker said. I give a lot of credit to our controller, Luke Everson, the work that he does with the budget. Philosophically, Luke and I believe this is a team effort. We work closely with the directors with their managers. I feel it's important that everybody involved in spending the money also knows where it came from and how to get it. I never want to give people a budget. I want them to help grow it. And so this is a group effort, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy, and I appreciate all the time that everybody puts into that. And Luke really does all the heavy lifting behind the scenes to get the balancing and things done. So I think it's important that you and the public understand that work that goes into it as well.
And I think that's communicated very well to us, and we very much appreciate how we start this process now, in the last several years, a lot earlier in the year, so that the commissioners are aware of where things are going, and the directors have more time to vet, get feedback and whatever else. So thank you very much to all of our directors and staff and everyone else for all the hard work you put into putting this all together.
All right, is anybody ready to make a motion?
I guess that would be, so I would make a motion to approve the budget as presented. Is that what it would be? So I move to approve the budget as presented.
Second.
Okay, further discussion? All in favor, poll the board.
Commissioner Hill,
Aye.
Commissioner Dawson,
Aye.
Commissioner Deutsch,
Aye.
Commissioner Rosted,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion passed. All right, one more. Number 5, board to consider for approval request to advertise for request for qualifications and RFQ for construction manager.
Thank you, Madam President. And this agenda item was contingent on the agenda item before being approved. So with that, we have met with our legal counsel on how to proceed if phase 2 was approved. So moving forward regarding our construction manager at risk, since this is a project that's over $50,000 bid limit, we had discussions on, could we continue with the same construction manager that we currently have, or do we need to open this up for bid? So we had a good discussion over several weeks with our attorney and our design team. And we just felt to try to be as transparent and open as possible to the public, and per North Dakota Century Code, we felt it was just beholden on us to open this construction manager open to the public and put it out for bid again. So our recommendations is that we put out an RFQ. An RFQ is a request for qualifications on potential construction managers at risk. So with time being of the essence and winter fast approaching and spring to soon approach after that, we'd like to get that shovel in the ground as soon as possible next year to cut off a potential month from allowing the construction manager to work with the design team. We are asking for permission from our commissioners to approve putting out an RFQ for a construction manager at risk services. So to do this, we have to advertise for 21 days, which in working through the schedule, we would send a notice to the paper tomorrow, would get our first ad in the paper on Saturday, which starts that 21-day time frame. We would advertise for the Saturday, the next 3 Wednesdays, and then have the due date for our request for qualifications due, I believe, on October 31st. Pending how many RFQs we receive, we would do interviews on the 1st, and then have this ready to present to facility committee meeting on the 2nd. So what this means is we would push our facilities committee meeting in October to that November, I believe it's the 2nd. And since we'd be pushing that back a week, we'd also ask the commissioners to allow us to push the November board meeting back from the 8th to the 15th. And what this does, it allows us to meet all of our notice requirements per century code and try to get that construction manager on board as soon as possible, which is going to help the design team with pricing and estimates and everything associated with that. So that would be our request per our procurement policy. We need to put this out prior to, or we need approval from the commissioners prior to putting out the RFQ. So that would be our request.
So our expectation would be that our current CMAR would put in a bid, and then we'd potentially have other bids to be able to compare and make a choice, one or the other.
Correct.
Okay. So I think it's only fair, since we've had 3 board meetings moved earlier in the month. Well, now we're kind of balancing ourselves out by moving one back.
Who
Yeah,
wants to have a
and-
meeting on the second Tuesday of the month anyways? Come on.
Yeah. And I know Tara's behind me going, yes, I would really like 2 weeks between facilities and the board meeting. So,
We
and
haven't had,
as with the other
we haven't had a
directors.
board meeting on the second Tuesday of the month in months, so.
Yeah.
So what exactly we would put this out, and when someone would submit this request for qualification, what exactly would they submit back to us? Are they submitting sort of high level dollar amounts? Are they submitting
So
interest?
a
Like,
request for qualification is they put a proposal together, and it does take time and effort to kind of give their background qualifications, their projects, recent history with the park district. The one thing that a qualification doesn't do that a request for proposal does do, a request for proposal includes a fee associated with that. So a request for qualifications, they submit their qualifications. We select 1, 2, 3 to interview the top 2 or 3 proposals, and then we interview them, and based on that interview, familiarity with the park district, familiarity with the job site, potentially familiarity with the town, projects of similar size and cost. You select the best construction manager at risk for the job. Once you select that manager, then you negotiate with them to try to get a fee that's fair to both them and the park district. And if you can't come to a consensus on that fee, you always have the ability to move to the next person in line. So I believe I explained that correctly.
Thank you.
Would somebody like to make a motion to consider the approval request to add, let's start over.
I'd
But-
love to.
Okay, you want to?
Absolutely.
Okay, go.
I move to approve the request to advertise for request for qualifications, RFQ, for construction manager at risk for Phase 2 of Fargo Park Sports Complex.
I
Second.
second it.
Oh, Jerry's got it.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Oh,
Okay.
I can pull the board.
Hold the board.
Commissioner Hill,
Aye.
Commissioner Dawson,
Aye.
Commissioner Deutsch.
Aye.
Commissioner Rosted,
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan.
Aye.
All right, thank you, commissioners.
Yep. And I wanted to thank Brian for everything he's done and ask you whether we're going to be seeing you at the next meetings.
Madam Chair, I'm not done till December 31st, which is a Saturday. I'm going to work that Saturday too, just to be a team player. But yes, I'll be at the next meetings.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think we would probably go through some withdrawals
I'm gonna,
without you.
I'm gonna check on you. I'll get you on Find My iPhone in the meantime. I'll check.
And just an FYI for all commissioners, we're in the process of, it's no surprise party, but we'll plan an open house for retirement social for Brian, and we're working with the staff down at VSS along with the Park District staff to plan that. So we'll give everybody notice, and if you want to come and say a few words and maybe give a little roast here or there, then
You gonna
We
serve
appreciate it.
noon meals?
We're gonna
VSS
roast some
meals?
catfish.
How about a deer? All right, do we need a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I don't think we actually need one, but
Yeah.
we're adjourned. Yes, of course.
Well, somebody has to say move to adjourn, and then you can just